If you're over 60 and find yourself waking up once, twice, or even 3 times a night just to urinate, this might be the most important message you hear today. Because the real reason behind these nightly interruptions may not be what you think. It's not your bladder. It's not your age. And it's not even your prostate getting larger. It's a deeply personal habit, one that many men have practiced for decades, that could be quietly disrupting your sleep, draining your energy, and reshaping your health without your knowledge. Over the past 30 years, I've worked with thousands of men in their 60s, 70s, and beyond. Many of them came to me exhausted, confused, and frustrated by their inability to sleep through the night. They had tried everything, limiting fluids, using the bathroom before bed, even taking prescription medications, yet nothing seemed to work. And in nearly every case, one overlooked routine was playing a significant role in their nightly struggles. Most men are never told this. There's one common self-pleasure habit that silently inflames the prostate, overstimulates the bladder, and disrupts the nerve signals that regulate healthy, uninterrupted sleep. It's not how often you do it, it's how you do it. Specifically, the position you use and the pressure you apply to the delicate system that controls your urinary function. The good news: when men make even slight adjustments to this habit, many start sleeping through the night again. No more drowsy, disoriented 2A trips to the bathroom. No more tossing and turning until dawn. And in this video, shared by Wisdom Senior, we'll walk you through what's actually happening in your body, what needs to change, and how to reclaim your strength, rest, and confidence starting tonight. Before we dive deeper, if this topic already speaks to you, consider subscribing and turning on notifications. Every week, Wisdom Senior shares straightforward, research-backed health guidance tailored specifically for men over 60, especially the kinds of things most doctors don't bring up. If this message resonates with you, leave a 1 in the comments. If it doesn't, type 0 so we know how to better serve you next time. Now let's begin at the root of the issue inside your body, where your bladder, prostate, and pelvic nerves form a delicate, interconnected system. This system doesn't just control how you urinate. It controls when, why, and how often. And when even one part becomes irritated, everything else can go out of balance. Here's what most men don't realize. The way you've been stimulating yourself may be putting just enough pressure on your prostate to create a nightly chain reaction. And it doesn't happen all at once. It builds up silently, gradually, until one day you start waking up in the dark and can't figure out why. I remember one patient in particular, let's call him Harold. He was 74, a proud father of 3, and a retired mechanic with calloused hands from a lifetime of labor. When he came into my office, he was worn down and simply said, "Doc, I'm tired. I wake up 3 times every night to pee. I can't remember the last time I slept straight through." He had already tried every obvious solution, cutting back on fluids, using the bathroom before bed, even prescription medications. Nothing helped. He was at a loss until I asked a question most men never hear from their doctors. "Tell me about your private routines, the ones you never talk about." He hesitated, then admitted he often masturbated while sitting down, usually late at night, in a hunched-over position. It was something he'd done for decades. And in that moment, everything clicked. You see, your prostate sits just beneath the bladder and wraps gently around the urethra. It's small, roughly the size of a walnut, but plays a crucial role in regulating urine flow. As you age, your prostate becomes more sensitive. Not necessarily diseased, but more reactive to pressure, tension, and inflammation. Now imagine sitting for long periods, especially in a position like on the toilet. Your pelvis is curled. Your abdomen is tight. Your pelvic floor, the muscle group supporting both bladder and prostate, is compressed. When you stimulate yourself in this position, especially with force or urgency, you're unknowingly squeezing the life out of that entire system. Even small, repeated pressure over time can cause subtle inflammation in the prostate. That irritation affects the bladder, scrambles the nerve signals, and tricks your brain into thinking you urgently need to go even if there's barely any urine inside. At 208, men like Harold find themselves waking up for a bathroom trip they didn't truly need. This isn't a failure of the body. It's simply a misunderstanding of how your body works now. When you're young, you can get away with anything. But after 60, your body needs a new kind of care awareness, patience, and better alignment. And here's the surprising part. It's not just what you're doing, it's where you're doing it. Because the next habit, one that seems harmless, is actually among the most damaging of all. What if the very place that feels safest in your home is the one habit keeping you awake at night? For many men over 60, the bathroom becomes more than just a place to relieve themselves. It's their sanctuary. The door locks. It's quiet. It's private. And over time, it quietly turns into the only space where no one interrupts, no one questions, and no one sees. That's why, again and again, men in their 60s, 70s, and even 80s have shared sometimes with embarrassment that they often pleasure themselves while sitting on the toilet. What started out as a matter of convenience quietly became a nightly routine. But here's what most of them never knew. That position, the one that feels safe, is quietly working against them. Not in a dramatic or painful way, but in a slow, steady, silent way that chips away at their well-being over the years. When you sit hunched over, with your thighs pressing upward and your abdomen tight, you unknowingly cut off circulation to the very area you're trying to stimulate. Your pelvic floor, the muscular foundation supporting both your bladder and prostate, gets compressed and stressed. Blood flow becomes restricted, nerves are pinched, and your prostate, which is key to both your pleasure and your urination, gets squeezed again and again without you even realizing it. This habit sets off a ripple effect. The body, under pressure, becomes inflamed silently. That inflammation leads to swelling. Swelling then irritates the nerves surrounding your bladder. And that irritation triggers false alarms. Alarms that don't wait for logic or bladder fullness. Alarms that wake you up at night, making you feel like you must go, even when your bladder is almost empty. I've seen this over and over, men convinced they have an overactive bladder, when in fact, it's simply an overstressed pelvic region crying out for relief. One man, let's call him Marvin, was waking up 3 times every night. We made just one small change. He stopped sitting and started standing. He also began slowing down, relaxing instead of rushing. And within weeks, his nightly wake-ups dropped from 3 to 1 and then to none. No pills, no procedures, just awareness and adjustment. What surprised Marvin most wasn't how fast things changed. It was how something so unconscious, so small, had been causing such a big problem. And he's not alone. Because even if you're already standing, even if you've stopped sitting altogether, there's still one common behavior that continues to throw your system out of balance every time rushing. Let's talk about what happens when men try to finish too fast. I once asked a patient, when you wake up at night, how much do you actually urinate? He paused and said, honestly, sometimes it's barely a trickle. But it always feels urgent, like I'm about to burst. That right there is the key. The problem isn't just how full your bladder is, it's how confused your bladder has become. You see, your body's urination system doesn't rely solely on how much liquid is inside. It's all about signals. Your bladder constantly sends messages to your brain through a complex web of pelvic nerves. But when those nerves are irritated, whether from inflammation, long-term tension, or years of unconscious strain, they begin to misfire. They send false alerts. And one of the biggest causes of that irritation, the way you've been touching yourself, especially if it's with too much pressure, tension, or urgency. When you grip too tightly or rush through the experience, you're not just finishing quickly. You're teaching your nervous system to operate in panic mode. Your pelvic floor tightens. The muscles around your prostate contract. Blood flow becomes chaotic. And those sensitive nerves begin to treat every minor sensation like it's a medical emergency. Now multiply that behavior over weeks, months, or years. Your body starts living in a loop where even the tiniest pressure in your bladder, sometimes only a few drops, can spark a full-on urinate wake-up call. You stumble to the bathroom, barely manage to urinate, and wonder if this is just what aging is supposed to feel like. But here's what I want you to truly hear. It doesn't have to be this way. I've worked with countless men who reverse this entire cycle not through medication, but through mindfulness. They slowed down. They softened their grip. They stopped forcing and started listening. And over time, their nerves calmed, their urgency faded, and restful sleep returned. This issue isn't about something wrong with your bladder. It's about how it's been overstimulated and misunderstood for far too long. And the solution doesn't start with doing less. It starts with doing it differently. Because in the next few minutes, we're going to explore something that may feel counterintuitive at first, but can completely rewire your system for healing, strength, and lasting satisfaction. A subtle shift that has already changed the lives of so many men, simply by redefining the way they relate to their own bodies. Up next, why gentle is strong, and how slowing down might be the key to taking back your nights. Over the years, I've sat across from countless men, arms folded, eyes uncertain, who say something like, "Look, I just want to get it over with. I don't need all the fluff. I just need relief." And I understand. Life teaches us to be fast, efficient, discreet. For decades, many of you were building careers, raising families, handling stress, and never really had the luxury of slow or gentle. You learned to get in, get out, move on. But here's what most men aren't told after 60: your body doesn't need speed. It needs softness. When you rush through self-pleasure, treating it like another item to cross off your daily list, your nervous system doesn't relax. It braces. Your muscles don't soften. They tighten. And instead of receiving the hormonal benefits of connection, things like oxytocin, dopamine, and serotonin, you experience a spike of tension followed by a crash. You might climax, but it leaves you feeling depleted instead of satisfied. But when you slow down, everything begins to shift. I've watched men in their 70s rediscover new dimensions of sensation just by giving themselves permission to take their time. They begin to touch with awareness. They breathe. They pause between movements. They shift from pressure to presence. And when that happens, something remarkable unfolds. The nervous system starts to feel safe again. The pelvic muscles stop clenching. Blood begins to flow freely. The body starts to heal from years of strain and unconscious force. One man, 66 years old, told me he cried the first time he slowed down. Not because he was sad, but because for the first time in decades, he actually felt something. Something real. Something deep. He told me, I didn't realize how disconnected I'd become from my own body. Slowing down made me feel alive again. You see, pleasure was never meant to be rushed, especially not now, not at this stage of life. It's meant to be received, to be experienced, not just performed. And yet, even if you're doing everything gently and mindfully, one crucial question still lingers for many men. How often is too often or too little? Because when it comes to restoring your body's natural rhythm, frequency matters more than most people realize. Let's talk about what you can actually expect often within just 1 week. One of the most common questions I get after guiding a man through these changes is, will it really make a difference? And my answer is always the same, yes. When you give your body the respect it's been quietly asking for, it responds. Not overnight, not all at once, but often faster than you'd think. There was a man named Ed, 71 years old, a retired school principal and proud grandfather of 5. For years, he believed getting up at night to pee was just part of getting old. He was waking up 2 or 3 times every night, frustrated, drained, and beginning to wonder if he needed stronger medication. But when we talked, and I explained how the way he'd been touching himself, rushed, seated, tense, might actually be irritating his prostate and confusing his bladder signals, he looked surprised, skeptical even. Still, he agreed to make a few small adjustments, stand instead of sit, slow down instead of rush, breathe instead of brace. 7 days later, he called me. His voice was lighter. I slept through the night for the first time in years, he said. I actually felt rested this morning. I had no idea it could work that fast. And Ed isn't the only one. When men begin treating their bodies with patience instead of pressure, with softness instead of strain, their systems start to rebalance. They sleep more deeply. They feel less urgency. They regain a quiet sense of control that most of us don't even realize we've lost until it comes back. In just 1 week, many men report waking only once per night or not at all. Their urine flow improves. Their energy returns. And perhaps most important of all, they begin to feel hope again. Not because they've reversed time, but because they finally stopped working against their bodies and started working with them. But what I want you to hear most is this. The change isn't just physical, it's emotional. It's psychological. These small shifts remind you that you are still capable of change, still capable of feeling good again. And yet, even with all this progress, there's one last piece that most men never talk about. It's not about what you do with your hands. It's not about how often you do it. It's about something much deeper, something emotional, something spiritual. And it might just be the most important part of all, because this isn't about shame, it's about wisdom. One of the most heartbreaking things I've seen throughout my career is how many older men carry a quiet, heavy shame about something that should never be a source of guilt touching their own bodies. Some stop altogether, thinking they're too old, too tired, or too broken. Others continue in secret, rushing through it like it's something to hide, like it's a burden to endure instead of a moment to experience. And yet the truth is, your body still matters. Your pleasure still matters. And your connection to yourself, especially in this season of life, is more important now than ever. Too many men treat their most private needs as something to hide, something to be rushed through, or simply endured, rather than something to be acknowledged and enjoyed. Over time, many begin to feel as though they've lost the ability to feel anything truly meaningful at all. But let me say this as clearly and sincerely as I can. From one human being to another, your body still matters. Your pleasure still matters. And your connection to yourself, especially at this stage of life, is more important now than ever before. This isn't about chasing youth. It's about being present. It's about recognizing that some old habits no longer serve you and finding the courage to let them go. It's about embracing a different kind of strength, one rooted in patience, presence, and a deeper understanding of what your body truly needs now. When you approach self-pleasure not as a way to escape, but as a way to reconnect, everything begins to change. It stops being a mechanical task and becomes something more sacred. You move from performance to presence, from routine to relationship. That shift, subtle as it may seem, is powerful, because when you let go of shame, you make room for awareness. When you stop hiding, you start healing. And when you stop pushing your body and instead start listening to it, your entire experience of life begins to shift. How you sleep, how you feel, even how you carry yourself through the world. I've seen men rediscover confidence they thought was gone forever. I've seen long dormant marriages quietly reignite, sometimes not with grand gestures, but simply because one man chose to treat himself with more care. I've seen lonely hearts find peace not by chasing something external, but by finally returning home to their own bodies, with dignity and grace. And here's the truth. This kind of change doesn't come from willpower alone. It comes from wisdom, from learning, from adjusting, from honoring the stage of life you're in now and treating yourself with the same kindness you so freely offer others. If you've made it this far, you might be asking, what now? How do I take everything I've just heard and actually apply it day by day, night by night, until my sleep, my strength, and my sense of self return? Let's bring it all together. If you're still here, I want to speak to you not just as a health educator, but as someone who truly respects the quiet battles you face each day. I understand what it's like to wake up in the middle of the night wondering why your body isn't working the way it used to. I've seen the frustration, the fatigue, and the quiet disappointment in good men who fear they've simply lost their edge. But hear this clearly, what you're experiencing is not failure. It's simply your body's way of asking for a different kind of care. We've talked about how your prostate, pelvic floor, and bladder are all part of one interconnected system. We've explored how even small, unconscious habits like sitting and rushing through self-pleasure can disrupt that system, irritate your nerves, and steal your rest. And we've seen how simple shifts like slowing down, changing position, and reconnecting emotionally can begin to reverse the damage, often in just 1 week. But more important than any technique or tip, here's what I hope you take away from this message. You are not broken. You are not too old. You have not run out of time. What you need now is not to fight your body, but to listen to it. Not to push harder, but to soften. To move with awareness. To treat this chapter of your life with the same wisdom, grace, and quiet strength that carried you through every other. Because healing isn't just about fixing a problem, it's about remembering who you are underneath it all. A man with dignity, a man with value, a man who still deserves a full night's rest, a healthy body, and a steady, confident sense of control. So start tonight gently, intentionally, and see what happens next. And if this message helped you, even in a small way, I invite you to support the community here at Wisdom Senior. Like the video, Share it with someone who might need to hear these words. Leave a comment below and let me know your thoughts, because your voice matters here. Your story matters. And if you feel called to help us reach more men who are searching for answers, men who often suffer in silence, consider making a small donation. Every bit helps us continue creating content that speaks directly, honestly, and compassionately to the hearts of older men everywhere. Thank you for being here. And thank you for taking this first step toward living with more strength, more rest, and more quiet dignity.